You're listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast, the show with a light-hearted look at the eventing world, all of the big event previews, reviews, and special guests, and of course, backed up with all of the key Echo Ratings stats. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast. Oh my God, it's yours. Sorry.
What do you think you're doing? What do you think you are doing?
It was muscle memory.
Oh, muscle memory. Isn't that convenient? I literally have to make up shows so I can host. We won't be starting that again. We're just going to go as we are. You're listening to your host for the evening, Diarm, of Echo Ratings. It is the greatest show. I think we know how this works by now. I've got Nicole Brown on the line. Nicole Brown, how are you?
I'm very good. I forgot that I was just the guest, and I went to press record and then just launched straight into a welcome. So sorry about that.
Just a guest. No problem. Sam, how are you?
I'm very well. I really enjoyed that. And for listeners who didn't, just to give you context of what happened even before they interrupted each other, Diarm was about to explain how the show works, and Nicole just pressed the record button as well and just cut him off, and you hear this like ping to start the show. So I was loving it even before Nicole did the intro when Diarm wants to do the intro. So I'm loving this. It is December. It is like Christmas time is descending. The kids are getting excited. I've got the blackmail card of Santa Claus is watching. So the kids are behaving more. It's brilliant. The horses are in work. 2020 plans are in full flow. And I have to say, this is a great show. This is a great show. I'm also really looking forward to discussing these great teams.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Concise as ever. Afraid to come back to you. I was actually going to start with you. The show today, of course, we are talking about the greatest. It is today we're looking at teams, the greatest team of the decade. So looking back at some of those major championships and some of the big team performances that we had. I will start with you, Nicole Brown.
Okay.
You have been on a greatest show before, have you?
Yes, we did greatest moments of 2019.
Okay, you know how this works. Know how this works. So I'm going to start with you, number 3. It'll go around the houses for the third best team performance, then number 2, and then we will finish with the best team performance of the decade. Nicole Brown, you're number 3 to begin.
Okay, my number 3 to begin is actually going back to the... Now, I scratched my head a lot over which of these results to pick, but I'm going to go back.
Britain.
No. I'm going to go back to the 2017 European Championships, and I am going to pick Team Sweden, who ended up with a team silver. Now, this was the championships that you had the likes of Great Britain, who actually won team gold. It was their kind of return to the top spot of team competitions after a couple of years, a good few years that had been dominated by Germany and then France at the Olympics. Germany did not complete a team, and Sweden were on the podium to finish in second. But I think it was a result that absolutely solidified the fact that this is a team who could well be challenging for podiums at future World Championships and future Olympic Games. Because yes, they've not been on a podium at a Worlds or Olympics. Have they ever been on a podium at a Worlds or Olympics? I don't think.
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
I mean they last won a European team gold in 1983. But otherwise, a team silver has been their best results. And they've got a few of them, including at Malmo in 2013, which was the other result that I could have gone to because that was obviously their home European Championships. But I have a feeling that year may come up later in this show. So I went for 2017. The likes of Ludwig Svennestel, Nicholas Lindback, Louise Svensson-Jarder, now Louise Reimacher, and Diarm's favourite Swedish lady, and Sara Olgertsson Osselt. So that was my number 3.
Excellent. I like it.
Don't seem over convinced by it, but that's
well,
okay.
no, I mean, there has been, God, I'd say there's been about 200 teams, has there, that have competed this decade?
Been a lot.
Yeah.
Guess how many individual gold medals Sweden have won in eventing.
Individual
Olympics,
gold medals.
Individual Olympic gold medals in eventing. There's only
Oh.
been about 20 or so.
What, Olympics?
Yeah.
No idea. I know they have 2 gold medals in the Europeans, but
so in fact the first eventing Olympics was in Stockholm on home soil, and they won individual and team gold, and they did the same thing in Antwerp in 1920. So they won individual.
Okay.
So the first 2 eventing Olympics, boom, individual and team. And then they won individual gold in 1952 in Helsinki. So basically home soil, because Helsinki is the capital of which country, Nicole Brown?
Oh, God.
Or Dermot Byrne, fastest finger.
I don't know.
I wasn't listening. What was the question?
Helsinki is the capital city of which country?
Finland.
Yeah, Finland. So
Okay.
next door to Sweden, and then their next individual gold medal was a year later, which was Stockholm. So like they're very good. I mean, next time the Olympics goes to Scandinavia, watch out for the Swede. Yeah,
I think they're often seen as the underdogs, and they won the Nations Cup series this year. I just think they have a good amount of very good horses and very good riders for what is a relatively small country.
They're in with a shout next year.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
Do you want to do your number 3 there, Samuel?
I will. Okay, now I haven't been this cheeky the whole way through, but this team has always fascinated me because I actually think that this was the greatest team of the decade. But the reason that they're in my number 3 slot is because they finished 14th out of 16 teams when they performed. So you didn't say greatest team performance, you just said greatest team. And I think that this was the greatest team of the decade. It was the New Zealand team that went to the 2014 World Equestrian Games in Cannes. Right now, 4 per team, 3 of them didn't complete.
Yeah,
but this is so we're not going to focus on the fact that they were awful and performed terribly. We're going to focus on the fact that they were a great quartet, because this is who they were.
What?
Yeah,
I mean, this isn't part of the game at all. So you just got to name 4
team. Yeah, the greatest.
I mean, they didn't even get around cross country. They didn't make it to the last day.
I will stand up for Sam on this one, and seeing as it's his number 3, I'll say that it's a fair shout, because I actually considered doing something similar.
I don't think.
I mean, we could all just pick. We could all just pick 3 or 4 individual performances. But sure, this team didn't even individual
This team, yes, but this team would beat, like, if you were doing like a fantasy. Some sort of, virtual thing that you could bring back. What do you call that? Like a Legends game or something, where you could bring back people from the past and stuff like that. This team, Andrew Nicholson, Nereo. Firstly, Andrew's last performance for Team New Zealand. Nereo had already been an individual bronze medalist at a World Championships 4 years earlier, and he was 4th at the London Olympics. So Nereo, one of the best horses in the world, went on to win badminton, as we know. Like one of the best horses we've ever had in the sport, with one of the best ever riders. So there's your front man, and he actually did finish 8th. Jonathan Paget and Clifton Promise. Now, this was 2014. In 2013, they won the hottest ever badminton, in my opinion. And in our ratings opinion, it was the hottest ever field. So they beat anyone there was in the sport to beat, including Le Biostatic Sam, Andrew, William, Sandra Ofarth, who actually won this World Games. So he'd beaten them. So Clifton Promise, and had the controversial result of the decade in winning Burghley and then losing it subsequently. But this horse was one of the best horses in the world, if not the best horse in the world at the time, given that 2013 year. Tim Price and Wesco. This was when Tim was really coming up and hitting the stage. And these guys obviously went on to then win a 5-star after this, and second at Kentucky as well. So we already had a good idea of how good Wesco was. And then Sir Mark Todd and Leonidas. And we, if anyone is going to...
Was Janelle Price not in that team?
She wasn't on the team. She was an individual.
Was she really? With Classic
Yeah.
Boy? Oh, okay.
Why would you ever question something that I... It's the fountain of all knowledge.
She finished 4th, didn't she, there? And she missed out on a podium place by a pole down in the show jumping. So I would have automatically...
You're right. You might as well include her if we're just talking about great riders.
No. Well, no, what a team. Leonidas, Wesco, Clifton Promise, and Nereo in 2014. What a team of titans and legends. All
it
of
just
them.
Shows you, though. It just
all
shows
of them
you.
are 5.
Exactly.
No, apart from Leonidas.
Yeah,
Not
Leo
5
himself didn't win, but he did have the greatest man ever to walk the earth riding him. And
he was a great horse. Let's not forget that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Because he didn't win, didn't he? It wasn't an amazing horse.
And honestly, I'm not even joking. I honestly, for go, it's great. It's fun looking.
Go and watch it. Go and watch how well they did. Or I don't know what else you could do. Look at the results.
A brilliant team is my point. I think just a brilliant. I think one of the best teams. And this is what this show is about. Because we could have just given you, every team that's won a championship. But how fun, that's a bit boring, isn't it? Whereas I think that I've highlighted quite an interesting point that people could overlook. The New Zealand team of 2014. Go look at it. Brilliant. Performed terribly, but they were brilliant.
Yeah, you're right. It was a shock. I remember at that World Championships, it was quite it was one of the. It obviously turned into, when we've talked about it on previous shows or recent shows, about that particular cross country day and the wildness associated with it and how tough it was coming off the back of that tough badminton as well. But the first key moment, that that murmur that goes around not just the rider's tent but all of the collecting areas and all of the places where people are standing trying to get information back when you're kind of not out at a spot on course. The first big one was the Kiwis were out because, as Sam says, 4 massive names competing together on a team. And then halfway through cross country day, for the Kiwis no longer to be in the competition, would have probably come in, Sam, as certainly in the top 3 favourites to win this.
Oh yeah. No, they had a huge chance. Yeah.
It's probably worth saying as well that a tough cross country track, those 4 riders would have probably been rubbing their hands together in glee, thinking, right, this is great, this is going to play right into our hands. And actually it did the opposite.
It was a weird one. I was first out for the Irish, and at that time we would have been, the big thing for us being a WEG is that it's your first chance to qualify for the Olympics, and that's what would have been on our agenda really, rather than a medal. And I think that helped us. I was first out. I had we obviously knew it was going to be soft. We obviously knew it was going as in the ground, and we knew it wasn't going to be an easy day, but nothing prepared. I was shocked as I galloped for the first minute. I could not believe how much my horse's feet were going into the ground. We had walked that course like 3 or 4 times, and you're starting to kind of, the grass is disappearing and it's getting a little bit muddy and stuff like that, but you're not like you weren't sinking, you weren't squelching. But when the horses went on it, they just sunk. Whatever, I think the fear with Normandy was that it was going to be rock hard, because that's what normally happens at that time of the year in France. It would be really, really firm. And I think they'd had so much drainage and irrigation and stuff done that actually we just sunk.
It did rain a lot.
Oh, an awful lot. We were lucky it went ahead, and but then I think it was easier for us to just go, okay, we're in get round mode, because we were looking for a qualification. I'd say the Kiwis were going for gold, and it's harder then to really just take your foot off the gas and think, okay, let's be in get round mode. I'd say they were still looking to try and be as quick as possible. They produced 2 of the fastest times in Classic Moe, the individual, and Nereo, were I think the 2 fastest times of the day.
Okay, interesting choice, but great team. Do you want my number 3?
Please.
You were at these ones as well, Sam, and you'll be able to shed a little bit of light on what it was like on the ground. I am picking the Canadian team back at Kentucky 2010. Couple of reasons here. So I was looking back. Kentucky 2010. Firstly, actually, I figured we'll bookmark this decade. It was the first time that all of the sports were held together in the same venue, and we've now had the last time as we go to the World Games again next time around. So that will be a first and a last of the decade. The team, they were sitting on a score of 98.4 after the first phase. Looking at who it was, we had Selena O'Hanlon was there on Colombo. We had Stephanie Rhodes Bosch on Port Authority, Holly Bennett Awad on Gin and Juice, and Kyle Carter on Madison Park. Now, I think these are pretty good dressage scores. I mean, they started, as I say, on that score of 94.8, which was a 29.5, a 33.9, and a 35. And then they were discarding Kyle Carter's 42.3. They're converted scores, so they were all kind of low 50s or mid 40s for Port Authority and Stephanie in the old scoring. Interesting little fact, that 98.4 is the exact same score as the Canadians started on in Tryon, and pretty much the same score as they started on. 98.1 was what they started on in Tryon, and 98.4 as it was here was the same score as they started on in Con 4 years later, which is hard to believe, really. But there was actually, I mean, the first phase doesn't really do anything. So there was actually about 90 teams this decade who were better than them in the first phase. But this was all about the cross country, and of the 4 on the team, the 3 of them, Holly, Selena, and Stephanie, all jumped clear and inside the time. I think the Brits actually did it at Kentucky as well, if I'm not mistaken, Sam, didn't they? But
they didn't include. So there are three counting scores in the end. Did for the Brits, but Miners Frolic didn't, and he was on a better starting score than opposition Buzz. So the key thing about this it's a brilliant shout, brilliant team, is that this team became the first ever team in a world championship to not add to their dressage score. So because their best 3 after dressage all remained on 0, and they were the first to do it, and it wasn't done again until 2018. So it was a brilliant performance, and actually one of
them knocked a pole.
Sorry, I mean in cross country. Sorry, I just mean in that cross country phase. So it was the first time. It was the first time it was done, and there, and it gave me. It also, as we've talked a lot in the Olympic build-up, the power of those big 6 nations: Great Britain, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, and the US. Their dominance in team competitions at the Olympic Games for the last 40 years. I think this Canadian performance gives a lot of nations like Ireland and Sweden and Belgium and the Netherlands, that it can be done. You can go.
This was their first medal in, I think, 32 years. Like you would experience this, whatever it is, 8 years later in a World Games as well, and back in the US as well, at Tryon. But I guess from a team point of view, you can imagine a nation like Canada, which is obviously a big eventing nation, but smaller than its big brother, the US, similar to what we have with our friends across the water in Britain. And they're going to, the US backyard, the home of horses in the US in Kentucky. They're not going to be operating from the same budget. They're not going to bring the same amount of fans. There's not going to be the same media coverage. find all these riders and all these horses are, Gin and Juice went on to be kind of a legend, or even was at this point a legend of the sport. Selena would rock up with Foxwood High years later and show how this was the start of something very special in her career. But to only add one pole from what are pretty good dressage scores, 29.5, 33.9 and 35, on a day when not many teams did it in the cross country and not that many teams show jumped all perfectly.
Well, that's where they were under pressure, by the way. Like for me, their cross country performance was the stuff of record books, and it was brilliant. And personally, that's how I love a medal to be won, and particularly a team medal that they go and deliver on cross country day. But the US, New Zealand, and Canada were in a serious ding dong battle where one of them was going to miss out, and it was always going to really kind of come down to a rail. And Canada and this quartet from Canada, they all did their job. They all put scores on the board, and they all minimized the penalties. And I think they probably would have taken a bronze medal even on the Sunday morning. But to go and bring it home in such style, it was a fantastic performance. I 100% agree with that. It's great.
Silver medal for Canadians, 2010. They go in as my number 3 team performance of the decade.
You're right there, Nicole. You sound like you've just been building a house or something.
No. Have I been clattering?
Course, absolutely.
But we don't. We just get on with it.
Sorry, I've got, honestly, listeners, so I'm recording in the house, which is currently empty, and I've got these little toggles on the end of my coat because it's quite cold, and I'm really sorry they keep cracking on my laptop, so apologies.
Well, while you're, no longer crashing and trying to break the place, would you like to give us your number 2?
You're actually next, Sam. You're actually
next.
Am
I?
He likes to change the order.
No, because then otherwise people don't get the chance to be first ever.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you've done. See? Well, the interesting thing about this was this leads brilliantly on from your pick, your Canadian silver medalist, because I too have gone for a silver medal winning team, and I too have chosen a team at a World Championships who performed superbly. Really in all 3 phases.
Really?
I have chosen.
Have you?
You wouldn't believe it. I've chosen the Irish team from 2018. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, folks, but this Irish team, they won the team silver medal, and I don't think I've ever mentioned it before.
Nicole, I've actually got a really funny picture that I can post with this podcast.
Amazing. Is it Sam brandishing his medal again?
I mean, I have a lot of those pictures. No, I was down in Ballybulger about a month ago, maybe. So it's now December. So let's imagine it's November 2020 or 2019, and you walk into Sam's sitting room, and it's like you're preparing for a birthday party. So there's bunting everywhere and balloons, and the bunting says "World Silver Medal."
So the bunting's been
not
up
a joke
for like 14 months.
Why would you take it down?
Do you go to bed at night, Sam, wrapped in an island flag?
Well, I just have the medal under my pillow, lest we be broken into or there's a fire or something. Like I might not be able to find it if there was a fire or something.
It's actually great, Sam. It's my number 2 as well. So I'm going to join you on this one, but you take it away. I think you have to tell the story first.
I'll tell you what we'll do, Dee. I'll let you talk about the performance. What I was going to let the angle I was going to come out was the build up, because the team of Mr. Chunky, Porrick McCarthy, Horseware Celery, Ben Sarah Ennis, Rogan Rua, and Cathal Daniels, and Horseware Highlight, and myself. Myself and Cathal were basically 6th equal at Le Moulin, 5-star earlier that year, and we were both kind of rocking up, I think, on 2 very good cross country horses. I had plenty of experience, and Cathal is golden wonder boy. I call him Boy Wonder. He's won medals all the time, but this was his first team appearance. And I felt we had two really strong team horses. I thought either of us could have been Pathfinders. I thought it was logical to kind of put us 1 and 2, which is where we ended up in the team. But the exciting thing for me was that Sarah Ennis had been in the top 10 at the European Championships in Stragom. I mean, actually very close to a medal, individual medal in Stragom with Horseware Stella Rebound. And, you know, she had those brilliant Chatsworth form and stuff like that. And we knew that we had a world-class combination here on our hands. And Mr. Chunky and Pora were doing the exact same thing. And at Campfire, I had a broken collarbone, and Mr. Chunky and Horseware Stella Rebound were both there, and they finished first and second. I think they both finishing in the 20s. And at the same time, there was been a few injuries maybe coming out from, I think, the Australian team. The fallout from Aachen was that there was, you know, a couple of big names weren't going to make it to WEG. It was about the time that the Fisher Rakana news broke, that it looked like Michael Young probably wouldn't be going to WEG. And I was like, guys, this is like, we could compete against these people, you know, with these horses in, but it was just for months starting to build that this team could really deliver against any other team. Mr. Chunky had been in the top 10 at badminton. And so basically when we went to WEG, all 4 of those horses had been in the top 10 at either a 5-star or a championship in the last 12 months. And and it was just really exciting to be a part of that. And all 4 managed to deliver. And the whole thing was you sometimes everyone goes to a championship with hope that, like, if we do this, we could. That's the sentence. If we do X and Y, we could win Z. But the whole team and the whole feeling for me was like, guys, we just have to go and just do what we do. We just have to go and do what we've been doing for the last 12 months. And it would take 3 very, very good teams to go past us if we do that. And that was it. That was exactly how it unfolded.
Yeah, I remember you going, and I remember you were all confident going there. And you had a really clear plan. You know, there was actually it felt a lot less like luck and hope. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to any previous championship team, because they all had plans as well. But this one felt like you were going there with a very achievable, like a plan that felt very achievable. You know, it didn't feel like you all had to PB. I think that was a critical piece of it. You knew that Sarah and Porrick were performing mid-20s dressage at the time, but went on to do that at WEG. You knew yourself how good you were in the middle phase, and that, you know, you had a very clear plan around what you wanted to do in terms of that contributing score and what score would be a contributing score. I guess the bit for me that made it special, and, you know, talking about outside the performance and talking about outside, I guess, the personal side of watching you finish on your dressage score at a World Games, the piece for me which made it really special was, I think there was, for all of the confidence that you guys had going there, all of you had, you know, you were all experienced enough, maybe outside of the boy wonder, who had kind of an unblemished route to this, and he went with the kind of childlike confidence that comes from never having been down, you know, like he's just a hard worker who's done very well. But like, if you remember, Sarah had been at that World Championships in France in 2014 with this horse, and had a 20 penalties cross country, and then hadn't been on the Olympic team in 2016. Porrick had been to Blair 2015 and had the disappointment of falling. I think he fell in this stadium. You were at the Blair Europeans, and while it was a personal success, you weren't on the team. And you also weren't at Rio 2016. You know, all 3 of you who kind of were going there as experienced, confident Irish riders, you'd all had something, for Ireland at the past, because you'd all competed plenty of times for Ireland at the past, which made you realize that, yes, all of this could go right, but it doesn't take much for it to go wrong. And while that was never your mindset, and it couldn't be your mindset, it made it doubly special for Irish fans, and huge group of Irish eventing fans who turned up at the airport to welcome me all home. Like, it was quite an emotional day for a body of people who were way beyond youthery. Now, we've talked about this so many times, so we won't go on about the Irish performance, but it was, and look, we can probably have this conversation because we're closer to it. Lots of teams, you can imagine what it would have been like on that Canadian team in 2010, or you can imagine what it would have been like around the British camps at Stragom or after Tryon. Of course, when you're closer to the teams, you get to see the emotion and the story, but for all of those pieces, this one stood out to me as well, Sam. So this was my number 2. Your number 2, Nicole, have you picked Ireland at Tryon?
I haven't actually picked one at Tryon.
Have you put it first?
No. I did actually consider
you picked Sweden,
Ireland, and then
Sweden. And you've not picked Amity, joking, Nicole.
But I knew you guys would do it, so I thought I'd let you have that one. Just a point on Sam. You said that when you went to the World Games in 2014, it's the first opportunity for an Olympic qualifying ticket, and again, Tryon was for Tokyo 2020. So to go and not only just secure a qualifying ticket when there are a lot of very, very good teams there, but to do it so impressively and actually push Team GB so close on the final day, because they went in looking like they would be out and out winners. And actually, I think Ireland were they within one pole in the show jumping of them in the end, or just over?
Just over.
Just over, maybe. It was very close.
There was a point. There was a point in the competition when we were within 0.4.
And everybody just kind of got a bit twitchy. So yeah, I completely agree with your pick of Team Ireland, but I am going to be predictable and pick a British team, but I haven't gone for Tryon. I have gone for the last World Games win before that, which is going back to Kentucky in 2010. So that was the first championship that we saw Michael Young and Labias Sadiq-Sam absolutely wipe the floor with their competition, and they took the individual gold, but Team GB took the team gold. And again, it was a really, really impressive team. You had William Fox-Pitt and Cool Mountain, who actually I think took the individual silver. You had Mary King, Imperial Cavalier, Nicola Wilson and the Great Opposition Buzz. And the discard score was actually Tina Cook, Miners Frolic, who were the former European champions, in fact, the reigning European champions at this point. So it was just one of those teams that doesn't come around very often, and massively, massively impressive. Put in an exceptionally strong performance and won by sort of 3 fences in hand over Canada and New Zealand, who took the team bronze. And I mean, the New Zealand team had the likes of Andrew Nicholson, Mark Todd, Caroline Powell and Clark Johnston as well. So they put in a very strong performance. But yeah, I obviously had to pick a British team. And for me, it was the back in 2010 Kentucky that really sort of stood out as one that I wanted to look back on, because it's not often that you have that many good horses in one team, and they were the kind of the stalwarts for so long.
Yeah, 2010 in Kentucky was a class one. Sam, what was it like riding at?
I was the thing that got me was, well, the facility is phenomenal, but it was as you say, it was this, every discipline was there. So like to watch raining, like I saw sports I'd never seen before. I was warming up every day with Tautius, who was like he was the biggest thing in dressage before Vallegro. He broke all the dressage records back then. Edward Gall, and I remember it was quite warm out there. And when Tautius was working, he'd do like kind of 15 minutes and be breaking quite a sweat, and the grooms would run over, one on each side, buckets, wipe the sweat off. So I made my poor wife sparks. I was looking at this going, we need to do this with horsefair bushmen who can't even go on the bit. So I was in the warm up with these guys, and then I was like, water, me and the horse. And so I was like, for God's sake, lugging around. She was like, yeah, would you learn to maybe get him round maybe for a few minutes, and then I'll wash him off. But it was amazing. It was a good competition. It was Yeah, it was big for me because I was still young. Like we were quite a young team, but that British team, they were very strong, and it was, they made everything look easy, and that's what a good team does do, I suppose, around a World Championships. They never really broke a sweat. They were very, very within themselves. Good team.
I feel like that was the last time for a good few years before Germany really took over dominating, and there was a kind of a changing of the guard in the British team, and sort of before they came back I think that was their last gold medal before the Europeans at Stragom.
Yeah, we're on our number ones. We're coming up to our number ones, and it would feel wrong, I think. I mean, we don't know what each other have picked in advance of this, but it would feel
I've
wrong
gone left
none
field.
of us had a German team.
Have you?
You've gone left field. I haven't. I've gone straight down the middle.
I think you two are going to have picked the same team. And I didn't pick it because I thought you two would have picked the same team.
Be interesting.
I don't know. I'm hopeful that mine is different. But I'd say we both have the same country.
If we look at the first phase scores, the best ever first phase score for a team this decade is Germany at Stragom. 58.5 they started on.
That's obscene, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. It was Bettina, Ingrid, Bettina on Senior Medicott, Michael on Sam. No, Fisher Rakana, wasn't it? And Ingrid on Hail Bob.
And Julia was there on. Was she there? Was Julia there? I think she was there.
2017.
Yeah.
No, they didn't win. Yeah. That was the year they were disqualified.
Yeah.
Is this your team, D?
No, I was just looking at the first phases when I was trying to pick one of these, okay?
I thought I was off the hook. I thought we'd avoided a clash.
I was looking at the first phase scores. Stragom, the Germans, 58.5. Next best, Lemulin, the Germans, 65.8. Next best, the Germans at Blair. Next best, the Germans at Lemulin this year. Next best, the Germans at Tryon. Top 5 first phase scores.
Do you want to go and commentate on dressage?
No, I'm just saying that if you're going to, if you want to win, and if you look at all the Europeans, they've all been 1 and 2 individually. You got to start well. Now, if you want to win team, you've got to jump cross country, which they didn't do on that occasion. Okay, I am going to go with my number 1 pick.
I'm going to be so upset if it's my team.
I think it's going to be.
It was the best team performance this decade, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is. It's the British team at Stragom 2017.
Is that what you've gone for?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Okay.
On you go.
Are you surprised?
Yeah.
No, they were good. No, they were candidates for me. But no, this is good. I think my team would have.
You think your team would beat this team? I look forward to hearing it. Yeah. I think this is an unreal team.
Okay.
So it was Nicola Wilson
a very good team.
Nicola Wilson and Bolana, Tina Cook and Billy the Red, Ros Cantor, All-Star B. They started Bolana 23.4, Billy the Red 25.5, and All-Star B 25.7.
It's a team sport, so you need to mention the Pathfinder who didn't contribute to the winning score, but still contributes to the team.
He didn't count after the first phase, 29.2, Cooley SRS, Oliver
Just
Tennant.
rubbing it in his face.
Then he had 40 jumping penalties with some small amount of cross country time. And then
the point I would pick up on what Sam is saying though is that actually his cross country performance, he was Pathfinder and he was one of the quickest on the cross country despite having a couple of problems. So I imagine there was some very valuable information that went back.
Maybe. Look, Oliver Tennant has done loads of class things in the sport. And when
that
he
is one of them.
I am more than happy to put them up in lights. But if I'm picking my best team performance, Cooley SRS, I'm not going to go on about Oliver's performance at this because it's not really part of.
No, but you've done it terribly. You see, you could have just nicely name dropped him. Yeah, dropped him into the conversation and kept going. But now forced us to, by not mentioning him. Yeah, it's become a thing.
It's become a thing. Like the elephant in the room.
You guys made it a thing. It didn't.
We really need to get Oliver on the show. By the way, we give him. We do a lot of positive promo for our
Yes, we do.
world number one.
But anyway, here come the girls. So
This
it's
isn't one of those
Balana,
points.
Billy the Red, and All Star B. As I mentioned, mid-20s and below that for Balana, 23.3. All of them jump clear. Balana's a second over, and All Star B is 4 seconds over. And all of them show jump with ease. Now, by the time they were going into the show jumping, I felt it was all done and dusted. I mean, Balana, Billy the Red, and All Star B, they can all jump. Particularly Billy the Red and All Star B. It was sort of similar to, it felt similar enough to Piggy, Tom, Gemma, and Roz at Tryon. Now, they didn't all jump clear, but it felt kind of secure going in there. They've been really, really good in that final phase. It was also, of course, coming off the back of huge German dominance, and it was the beginning of an era which I think, what do you guys think? It's questionable. If you were to say like nation of the decade, I still feel it has to be the Germans.
Yeah, I agree.
Of course.
They've dominated so much.
The Brits rallied there towards the end, and they started the decade well with the WEG. I mean, it's not, they won 2 world championships in this time. So it's not like out of the question that it's not them, but
Germany went for 5 consecutive years. They won 10 gold medals, which is the full
they won
amount.
Every gold medal.
Yeah, and they won every gold medal, and that's just in the 5 years in the middle bit. Mickey won the individual golds before that run, so in 2010. Then 2016, sure, he won individual gold again. So that's we're up to 7 golds in a row now. Yeah. 2017, Ingrid. So now we're at 8 golds in a row.
And actually,
they took a year off.
Championship, they were first and second.
They've won 9 out of the 10 individual golds this decade. Blinking.
Yeah, we'll let them have it. What I would say though is this was the beginning of Chris Bartle and Dickie Waygood, Chris moving from that dominant German team, and up until then, what I suppose 2019 had a perfect record with the Brits, with bringing home this and then setting them up for a gold medal win at the World Championships the year later. So yeah, I thought this was a class team, class performance. They went there not as favourites, but they did go there under pressure. Always British teams will be under pressure. The scrutiny that's on those British riders is, I think, like no other. Maybe the US rival it. But yeah, special team and the beginning of something special. So Strigom for the Brits, my number 1.
It was a big one because they hadn't won a gold medal since 2010, like individually or team. And Rio had been a tough build up for them, like Brits were up against it to win a medal before, when they were getting on the plane to go to Rio, and it had just been a tough decade. That amount of for all the German team were shining, that's got to hurt the other superpower kind of, or the nation that had been the superpower up until the Germans arrived, which was Great Britain. And we always said, like, it was when Chris Bartle and Dickie took over the team, I think there was a lot of hope for the Brits, but they had to turn hope they had to put it on paper. And my God, did they delivered it. There was a super performance. Yeah, no, it's a great team.
I think the pressure thing is quite interesting, the kind of pressure of a nation, because the Brits absolutely have that. I mean, they have that with their football teams as well, where at least with their eventing team and their equestrian teams generally, you can go there with the hope at least that they will be, or they are a superpower. In football, like, they're not even really that good, and they go there presuming they're going to win the World Cup. I think it's a really interesting comparison potentially with the US now, because the pressure is growing and growing and growing in a similar way as it would have been in Britain in that time, 2010 up to 2017, for a team that are at the forefront of eventing. The US are still such a huge eventing nation, literally, and so much love for the sport, so much expectation, so much investment of time money, effort. Yeah, that pressure continues to build, and it will come. It will come, but
I think it's about breaking that cycle, isn't it? Like, actually, in Rio 2016, it was France who broke the cycle of German domination, and it was the German team are beatable, and therefore other teams maybe thought, actually, we can beat them again, and the Germans thought we are beatable. Perhaps I just think there's that, confidence is key, and they had been so dominant for so long. And they always, as you said a little bit earlier on, got off to such an impressive start in the dressage that it became a little bit of, we're chasing the Germans again. But there was that belief that actually the Germans could be beaten.
Agreed.
You're up, Nicole Brown.
Nicole, do you want to do your number 2?
I'm on number 1.
Yeah,
sorry, you are. You're on number 1. Yeah, your best
we're all on number
team
ones.
performance of the decade.
Okay, so I am actually going to go for that French team that broke the German domination and took team gold at the Rio Olympic Games.
Wow.
They would have been a team, I think, that the French are always, you can never underestimate them, because they fly under the radar a little bit. And at the beginning of 2016, they came over to Chatsworth for the Event Rider Masters class for the very first ever leg. And they basically dominated. So I think they dominated the podium. All 3 of them were on the top 3 places on the podium. And then they all disappeared back to France. And nobody really heard too much about the sort of the French preparations going into Rio. But they then came out in Rio when the Germans would have been very much, favourites to take the top spot. And the Brits were very, very strong as well. And they just absolutely delivered. I mean, if you look at the team, the German team in Rio, you had Julia Krajewski-Samurai Duto. It was her championship debut, but she had been, is that the year that she'd been 3rd at Le Moulin in the 5-star? You had Sandra Offorth and Opgun Luvo, who had been the world champions. They were the reigning world champions at the time. Ingrid Klimke and Hale Bob, and Michael Young, Labia Satiq Sam, of course, the defending Olympic champions. So they are going to be the hot favourites. You had very, very strong teams from elsewhere, but France came in and they were a fairly young squad.
They were tipped by a young duo from Ireland who had just started the David Company at 14-1, and we did a YouTube
video. It's actually quite funny. It's still available.
Is it still available if anybody wants to go and see?
14-1. We put them up.
14-1 is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I just think that they all flew under the radar a little bit. And at that point, the ones that had real 5-star form would have been Astier, Nicolas and Piaf de Bonneville. But and I think they were the winners of Po the previous autumn. But otherwise, yes, one or so of the others had got 5-star form, but they were all 4-star horses. And they were all between the age of 10 and 12 going into the Olympics, the horses. So they weren't sort of hugely experienced, as you would have seen Labia Satiq Sam, who would have been 16 when he won his 2nd Olympic medal. So they just delivered. And Astier Nicolas ended up taking the individual silver medal. And the other horse that I am going to talk about a lot, I imagine, over the next 12 months would be that of Thibaut Villat and the horse King de Brio, who, as a championship horse, made his championship debut at the Europeans at Blair Castle in 2015, finished 3rd. And since then, his worst championship performance has been, I think it was 13th in Rio.
Did you make me put him up for something recently?
Probably the Europeans.
It would have been the Europeans, I think.
No, was it a 5-star?
No, I don't think so.
Because his championship record is better than his normal record, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. His championship record is just incredible. But then going into...
Or was it the Po preview? I think it might be.
No, it was Le Moulin. It was Le Moulin. That's where it was, at the European Championships.
I think there were a good deal of bets going on the podcast group. And actually, I think it was either Spike or Kieran who took you on Thibaut Villat. You went against him, they went for him, and I think you might have lost money.
No, he
ended up having a rail.
They asked me for odds, and I offered them podium odds, and they said that was way too low. That was what happened.
Oh, okay. So you actually saved the money in the long run. I mean, his poll down was expensive in Le Moulin because it cost him a podium finish. But I just think that French team overcame a German super team who were so strong. And when you're looking at Hale Bob, Opgun Luvo, and Le Biestatique Sam all on the same team, that is a super team, and that is why they've been so dominant over the last decade. And actually, the Germans were only just over a fence behind them, and two of their counting scores, Sandra Orforth and Ingrid Klimpke, were carrying 20 penalties, so they pushed the French all of the way. But yeah, I just think that the French broke the German domination, and they took everyone by surprise a little bit in Rio. So they're my number one team performance of the decade.
Good shout. Very good shout.
What struck me about that, I think the way they delivered it was intriguing. They were right there, like we were following them like a hawk because we had our money was riding on it. They started strong in the dressage. Like the angle we had taken was that form that we had seen, that Chatsworth form, and they were right there, very competitive after the first phase, and then Astier was just exceptional. If you can get footage back of the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, Astier Nicholas and Piaf de Neuville, for me is one of the best cross country rounds I have ever seen from a young man on a big stage, and would have had, he was a 5-star winner already, so he would have had aspirations of winning an individual medal. And just absolutely delivered, but not a bead of sweat on that man's brow. He was exceptional, and I thought, right, this is it. Like they're just going to, and everyone started to have problems throughout the day, and it was inevitable. It was inevitable after that first round of riders that this was going to be a serious course. The chat coming out of Rio was that this was a serious course, and I thought the French are just going to put their foot down, and what I thought was intriguing was they didn't. They took long routes. They took on time penalties. They suddenly went like strategically and tactically where I didn't expect them to go, and they dropped. They were dropping down. They dropped off the pace. I think they nearly dropped out of the medal places for a short period of time. And certainly going into the show jumping, they had some climbing to do. Off the top of my head, I think they were in bronze going in there with Germany always having the potential, despite having those
Germans
those
were one rail away. I think the Germans had one test below 30, and this is all scoring now. Would it have been below 40?
No, below 40.
Yeah, below 40 in the all scoring.
So Opgun Luvo was a 41.6 in old money. Le Biestatique Sam 40.9, and Ingrid Klimpke was the only one, 39.5, that broke the 40 barrier.
Queen.
They had underperformed basically in the
but they had one clear jumping round cross country, and they were still only one rail away from
crazy.
The they were fast. A lot of
they were really fast,
carrying penalties.
I mean,
you never have thought that of that German team. We talked about their dominance at Rio.
You can look at this and say Thibaut Villette, King de Brieux, finished in 13th. They picked up 24.4 time penalties. Ingrid Klimpke and Hale Bob actually finished in 14th, one place behind them. They only picked up 6 time penalties and 20 jumping penalties. So they had actually added 26 penalties to their dressage score in the cross country. So that was almost identical. But the French played it tactically brilliantly, and whether that was their original game plan or not, I don't know. But they just absolutely came from what I would say is probably nowhere. I mean, this is the same Olympic Games that we're talking about that New Zealand went in with Mark Todd jumping for team gold, and one pole went and they dropped team silver. Another pole went, they dropped team bronze.
I think they actually had one pole. One pole was actually, they were still fine.
Oh, okay. One pole fine, 2 poles dropped to silver, 3 poles dropped to bronze, and 4 poles, which is what Mark Todd Leonidas had, dropped them out of the medals.
I hope Di and Pete aren't listening.
No, I know.
That's like
Poor
at least
Leonidas.
the third or fourth
Must be at least the third time
that we've taken them through that on this show.
On this show? On this, on
as
this,
in
on
the eventing podcast.
I was going to say on
Yeah.
this episode,
Platform.
on this poor episode where Leo's
No.
been hammered. It was.
No, I
You're
put him
right,
up as one
Nicole.
of the greatest of all time.
Pal, sure you just said
I
it was
did.
on Mark Todd there
They're
a few
my
minutes ago
third
on the
greatest
pod.
team.
It's all recorded. No, I think on that though, I think this show jumping, you mentioned that Sam, the French did have to climb a little bit, the Kiwis did drop, the Australians were there, and I think it was Stuart Tinney who they would have been relying on, who they probably knew was going to carry at least a pole, and his poles came down. I think it was, from memory, one of the most exciting finishes in the Olympics. Now, London and the single rail chain, like for Sarah Algerson. Of course, the single rail for Ingrid at Tryon was fascinating. At the Europeans, a single rail, but on a more team. The Europeans this year, the single rail for Michael, giving Ingrid the win. But from a team point of view, this one felt like huge movement in the show jumping phase, which was brilliant. In fact, the Europeans probably had it a little bit this year as well, but this Rio one really stands out.
Well, I'm going to bring some order to the podcast because
we've been waiting for this one.
As fun as this has been, there have been 8 teams mentioned. There's been, very deserving Swedish, Canadian, Irish, French, British teams put up. Oh, and New Zealand team.
Well, I thought you were leaving it out on purpose.
But obviously this week, we've alluded to the fact that the Germans have been the nation of the decade. This team that I am choosing, it was a team of 4, 3 scores to count. Their discard score finished 7th individually. And it was Dirk Schrader and Hop and Skip. This was the discard score. One of the great pathfinding combinations. Hop and Skip, just a brilliant horse, brilliant cross-country horse. And Dirk, one of the great thinking men of the sport and great cross-country riders as well. I mean, great rider in all 3 phases, to be honest. But that was the drop score. I was looking for a German team that had Ingrid and Michael for sure. This team has that, and the other team member was Sandra Ofarth and Opkan Lubo. It's the Blair team European Championships from 2015, the German team there. They won by 51 penalties. That's how far ahead.
That's obscene. 51 penalties. They could have ridden another combination. They could have counted all 4 scores.
Yeah, they actually could have.
That's just mad.
Counted 4 scores because Dirk was on 48.3. They could have counted his score. Going, we don't need to drop that. We'll include it.
Oh my God, is that true? They could have counted his score and still won.
Yeah. And I wanted to have Sam, Labiosidic Sam, in the team, but I couldn't. Michael won this with Fisher Takinu, who hadn't done a whole heap before and hasn't done a whole heap since, but he was an 8-year-old. And if one performance can ever put a horse into the record books, then this is it, because it was a championship, and it was a tough championship, guys. Blair was attritional. It was difficult conditions again. It's up and down. It's Scotland. They don't say Scotland, they're Scotland. Right?
Sounds like it was tough. In Bulgaria.
It's tough.
Scotland.
It's Scotland.
Oh wait, Sam, I would really like to hear Nicole try it again.
My brother actually lives in Scotland, and I have Scottish family, so they're probably all going to disown me now.
Where does your brother live? In a Scottish accent?
Aberdeen.
In his local tongue, please.
Aberdeen. Oh. Scotland. That's okay. That's not very good. Aberdeen.
Oh wow! I mean, you're leaving out letters and everything.
Oh dear.
Nicole, I hate doing this, but I mean, if we were to put this to a Facebook or a Twitter poll afterwards, and we were to put these teams up against each other, the French team at Rio, the Brit team at Stragom, and the German team at Blair, it actually feels like he's right. I mean, those kind of numbers are just blowing me away.
I mean, I agree. To be able to count all 4 of your scores And
as you said, not just. I mean, the Rio cross country track was so difficult. Stragom was tough, but it wasn't anything like Blair 2015. It was nothing like Blair 2015. I mean, that was.
Hi guys.
Hi Harry.
Very nice. Sorry, it's on traps.
That's okay.
Are we on? Oh, you're on. Okay, we're still in the middle of another pod. Harry Mead's job.
Oh, are you? Are you joking?
No, that's okay.
Guys, sorry, have I just butted in? This
it's great. Harry, guess where we are? This is brilliant. We'll definitely leave you in.
Very good. Well, just hit me with a totally unprepared topic.
We are discussing the best team of the decade.
Greatest team of the decade.
And we're currently, we've gone as our number ones. I won't give you all of the choices, but as our number ones, and you can decide. I won't tell you who picked them. You can decide which one you want. The French team at Rio.
Yeah, and we're talking about best as in like if you're going for one-off top score, or are we going for like longevity of
the greatest is very subjective, Harry. It's whatever you feel is the greatest team performance or the greatest team.
It's been interpreted in a number of different ways. So some people
Sam picked a team that finished 14th.
Yeah.
That got eliminated.
No, well, hang on.
Because they were nice. Because they were nice.
It was a great team. When you listen to the podcast back, Harry, you will. But they performed terribly. It was just a great team. But I went for a much more sensible
French team. So you've got the French team, Harry. You pick one of these off the top of your head. French team at Rio, the Brit team, which did very, very well at Stragom and began, a new period of dominance, and the German team at Blair.
Yeah, see, I go for the German team at Blair, I think.
That's probably the right answer.
But you're right. We think you're right. Yeah, we all.
Thank you, Harry. That was my selection.
I got to justify it because the German. So if you're, obviously I'd be waving the British flag to support them, but if you're being critical, that the success of the British team at Stragom was potentially, the Germans slightly fell apart, and that they were counting cross-country penalties, which they hadn't been previously. So the British team was very good, but would they have beaten the non-form German team? We wouldn't know. Whereas the German team, I think what was particularly influential in Blair was all four Germans, and in fact, I have a feeling all six Germans came out and jumped clear rounds in show jumping, having done good dressages and gone very well.
Yeah.
The stat is, Harry, they could have counted Dirk's score, who is their discard score, and still won gold, which I don't think. And
admitted their best score being Michael Young.
No, just count all four scores.
Just count all four. They won by 51 penalties, and Dirk was
no way.
48.
Added the no way.
Yep.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
So there we go.
This was a good finish to the greatest team of 2019. Harry Mead joined us.
What a bonus.
Well, I'm really sorry for busting it. I feel like I've just walked in someone's house and then sat down and joined in their dinner party conversation.
We were all sitting around having dinner, and you're like, "Oh, are you having dinner?
What's for pudding?"
Okay, we've done it. That is the greatest show. We had a bonus appearance from Harry Mead at the end, who agreed and found that the German performance at Blair 2015 in that very tough European Championships was probably the winner. A good show all around, team. Well done, everybody. And thank you, Harry, for joining at the end. And we will be back soon with another episode of The Greatest.
Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast. This podcast is available for free on iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or wherever you usually listen to your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Find us at eventingpodcast.com or search Eventing Podcast on social media.